All right, well, welcome to Tech Tip Tuesday. Now, I haven't done one of these yet. We've had Jason do them. Jason's going to be doing some exciting things, so we cannot wait to tell you all that he has happening here in the next couple of months. I think he's probably had all of me and Larry. He can stand for a lifetime for a while. But I decided that I would take, what better of a tech tip could you do than to show somebody what not to do? So for this Tech Tip Tuesday, we're going to go through a post repair inspection, kind of the process from start to finish, how it ended up resolving itself, and then what some of the consequences or follow ups of these post repair inspections are. So let's just dig right into it today. Okay, all right. So the vehicle in question is a 2021 Subaru Crosstrek. It came to a really nice certified shop that does not happen to be a DRP, also does not happen to be a national MSO. And the customer brought it in based on the shop's certifications and kind of reputation in the town. And when the shop looked at it, obviously it's an immediate, it's just an immediate total loss. There really wasn't a whole lot of questioning here to be done. If you've written a lot of Subarus, you guys can instantly see that. Now, I do want to make sure that this is one of my least favorite colors, and I know it for a lot of painters it's very easily. I don't like this color. It doesn't kind to me. So really, depending on where this car is parked, whether it's outside, it catches the blue reflection and it'll seem blue, and then when it's inside, it'll seem more gray. In the initial discussions around this, I had a couple of insurers go, "Those are pictures from two separate cars, Kristen." And I was like, "No, let me explain color refraction to you." So I do want to make sure that we upfront understand for everybody that we are covering the same car. So if these pictures aren't enough for you, then I'll show you a few more of the vehicle. So you can see it is a New York car. Winters in New York. This is why I don't live in the north and I live in the south. So this is how the vehicle initially, reported itself to the collision repair center. I love how the tow truck drivers and everybody had shoved all the parts in it. We're not going to show you all of those photos, but those tow truck drivers, when they're picking things up at the accident scene, can add to the estimate just simply by what they do. But it is a front end and a rear end collision, so we have damage to the left front. We have extensive damage to the right rear. Here are a few more of the close-ups of that. So this was not a light hit by any means. And we have the two impact points that are there. So what happened to this vehicle? Well, typically car comes in, we look at it from 50 feet away and go, yeah, that's a total loss. And then the insurance company's like, no, that's not a total loss. We can't see it. And I get that if you've not written a lot of these, that might be seem kind of light damage, Kristen. That doesn't seem like that should be a total loss. But our shop did get it in, did perform the requested teardown and wrote an estimate, as did the insurance company. So this one is a State Farm claim. It seems like I think I was talking on Coffee Talk yesterday that almost everything I have right now seems to be a State Farm problem. All right, so our shop, our certified shop, wrote the estimate in accordance with Subaru's repair procedures and requirements, and the estimate came to $29,476.21. State Farm sent a representative, a Dennis Warner, and Dennis, I'm calling you out because, dude, I can't look. You wouldn't have been one of my estimators. I'm just going to put it that way and very clearly and frankly. It's a very, very poor sheet. And this vehicle really didn't, there was no excuse. There was no real teardown required. It towed in without the bumper cover and everything kind of shoved in the back. So that there's no real excuse or reason for missing or maybe blatantly as writing for this. So Dennis there, and that's his license number in the state of New York, wrote an estimate for $6,322.14, and that's where it went wrong. Sometimes this is, I want to say, enterprise level, meaning it's the insurance company as a total, between adjusters and field appraisers and estimators, etc. And then sometimes it's one person that can throw a wrench in this by either what they say very early or how they react. And I used to tell my estimators and my adjusters all the time, You don't get to have a feeling, and you don't get to have an opinion, and you don't get to have any of those things, because it's not your car, and it's not your claim, and it's not your anything, right? Like, we're here to just take care of the customer. My personal opinions or whatever. You write what you see, and you write what you know has to be done. So, in my opinion, looking back at this, I think this is where it went wrong. The very first appraisal was way off base, um, and we dug our heels in a little bit. So we have this huge price difference between the shop and the insurance company. The shop saying, "Look, this is an obvious total loss," and then now we have this insurance appraiser going, "Oh, this is an easy, less than $10,000 hit." For those of you that have fixed Subarus, you're already like, "Oh no, 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 we're way off there." So what happens? Well, as this continues to go along, we get to this point. I'm going to tell you what the inspection dates were a little bit later, but quite frankly, State Farm does do a very good job of getting out on this car early. Within a few days of the original date of loss of January 20th, they're out there on it. Within 10 days of that, there is the initial appraisal by our friend Dennis there. This letter of February 12th has been several days or several weeks after there has been this appraisal. The shop and the insurer, the State Farm representative, go back and forth, trying to explain what parts need to be replaced, etc. The major difference is obviously the shop's got rear body, they've got frame, they've got the quarter panel, they've got all the required operations, and State Farm's got repair on most everything and aftermarket parts. And none of the required procedures from Subaru. So when we get to this impasse, now our State Farm adjuster has added to the mistakes that Dennis has made. So the customer gets this letter from State Farm. Couple of things. One, if you are an insurance adjuster and you're watching this is never a good idea. What is in this email or in this letter that goes to this customer, you should probably never ever send that. It sets you up for big problems, and those problems come back to roost a little bit later. So basically, the adjuster digs their heels in and says, "We're not paying a penny more than what our adjuster wrote. That is all that is required to repair the vehicle, and we can get it repaired for that amount in the market." And I hear this all the time, and I go, don't ever utter those words ever out of your mouth as an insurance company, or put those in writing, because you can't, and we'll show what happens on this one later. So the customer basically asked, "Well, put that to me in writing, and then tell me who you have said is going to repair it per your estimate and guarantees it." So this is the email from the State Farm adjuster to the customer. This is them promising a select service shop that happens to be a national MSO is going to repair. This facility can perform the work that our appraiser wrote for damages on your vehicle. This repair facility is called blank, and here is where, and they're going to work off of our estimate, and here's where they're at. Now, if you're a body shop, even if you're on the State Farm Select Service program, no insurer gets to speak for you, right? Like, you're not going to be able to go into court and go, "Hey, not our fault. We did what State Farm told us to do." So just seeing that being said to a customer ought to cause you some concern. If you're a regional director or you're a CEO of a large MSO, you probably want to tell your branches or your offices, never ever let this happen. That if they see one of these, they should probably. So the insurer has now interjected themselves into the repair. So if you listen to Erica Eversman's training on, the insurance company can either elect to repair, which is take possession of the vehicle and repair it, or pay for damages. In this case, this is sort of a modified, really, by interjecting themselves. The insurer, because of the actions of the adjuster, has now basically said, "We'll take possession of the property. This is where you're going to send it, and these people are going to repair it the way we've said repair it." So that one of two things that an insurance company gets to do, this adjuster's muddied the water. I guarantee you they did it because they didn't have enough training. I love this little sentence at the bottom, and they will repair your vehicle back to pre-accident condition. That's another thing we used to train our people pre-accident or pre-loss. That's such an objective term that it's very hard to like quantify that or explain that if you're on a witness stand. So usually you'll see more workmanlike manner, or we will repair your vehicle within the standards and guidelines of the market, or whatever. But if you're going to say pre-accident condition, so now the insurer is stating that the DRP shop that will not be in control apparently, because the insurer is saying you're going to repair it per our estimate, will also, by not having their own estimate, going to guarantee that they're going to get it back to pre-loss condition. So there's just a lot of things going wrong already. So here's what the customer agrees to do. The customer goes, okay, you get the car. So they allow for this thing to be picked up and taken to State Farm's DRP shop to have the repair. Now, when that happens, shops will call me all the time. Kristen, we're at an impasse. I'm at $20,000 to fix the car, and the insurer only wants to pay $7,000. And the insurer has said that they've got a shop that'll fix it for that. And I go, okay, right? That's the only thing I need you to do is just make sure the customer understands. Try to get the customer to agree to come back for a post-repair inspection. And then I usually tell them to tell the customer to call that shop and tell them they're not authorized to repair the vehicle. So we're going to move it to whatever DRP the insurer wants. But we're going to tell that shop that they are not authorized to make repairs, nor are they authorized to submit any supplements to the insurer. Because typically what happens on these is you get an adjuster or somebody that just almost intentionally says no to things that are obviously needed in the repair. It doesn't mean that it's every single penny of your estimate, but there's a lot of stuff in there that needs to be paid. So you're at 10, the insurer's at 4, it gets moved to this DRP, and suddenly the estimate's 7, right? So all the stuff they were telling you they were not going to pay for, they suddenly pay for when it gets to a new place in a supplement. So I just tell the customer to say, hey, just tell them they're not authorized to do repairs, and no, they're not authorized to submit a supplement. In other words, if they think that that estimate is incomplete that the insurer provided them, that they cannot repair it per the estimate that the insurer wrote, which is what the insurer said was going to happen, then they need to tell you what all of the additional items are going to be. And then y'all need to have a discussion about it, and then you need to decide what the supplement. But just because it goes DRP does not mean the shop's suddenly in charge and can make all of these decisions with the insurer behind your back. Now, to facilitate that movement, there's a couple of things that we ask a shop to do. So if you find yourself in this situation where you've written an estimate and an insurer wants to take a vehicle out for your property and they're going to send it somewhere else, there are a few things that we recommend get done. Number one, have that conversation with your customer that we just talked about. Number two, mark the windshield prior to pickup. I've never met a tow truck driver that comes in and cares about what's written on the windshield. And so we like to write on the windshield. This is a sample. Obviously, this was not this car. This is a sample that another shop sent. Basically, just say vehicle is unsafe to operate per Hyundai North America, and per Progressive, they are towing it to this shop for them to assume the liability of repair or whatever. Sometimes people write at the bottom what the issue is: vehicles being towed to such and such repair shop to repair, in contrast to Subaru guidelines or whatever. And then some people will write at the bottom, vehicle will return for post-repair inspection. We've had some of our customers write, vehicle will be post-repair inspected by Collision Hub. We are happy to help. We do these kind of all during the week. I think Larry's doing one today even. The beauties of FaceTime or Zoom or any other meeting where we can get on the phone with you while you're physically inspecting the vehicle and talk you through it. So that's something that you can call and we'll be happy to help with. I always say put a copy of all the OE procedures in the vehicle. So the research and what you did, put that in the car, right? So that next technician at that shop, we can definitely say they knew. So we talked about ignorance sometimes being a defense. One of our ways that we combat that is we do put those procedures in the vehicle. And so the shop can't say, I didn't know. I didn't know the seats had to come out. I didn't know the airbags had to be removed and checked. I didn't know any of that stuff had to be done. Well, all those procedures were in the vehicle. You should have known anyway. But if you didn't, we're going to make that information available to you and then put a copy of your estimate. So sometimes you don't know better. You can't do better till you know better. And I always like to say that maybe the shop it's going to just needs the opportunity to see what a properly written vehicle and a properly researched vehicle looks like. So we put all that in there. At a later date, if I need it, which we have a case file. So if you come to our adjusting class, we'll take you through a case file. The depositions and everything that happens between the body shop, the estimator, the shop manager, the shop's regional director, everybody, and how it comes in handy when we can go, did you review the paperwork that was put in the vehicle? Here's a copy of the paperwork that was in the vehicle. What did you do with it? I don't know. We threw it away as soon as it came in. Oh, okay. So make sure that you do mark that. Here is what I will tell any shop, whether you're a national MSO or you're an independent. When you take a car from another body shop, buyer beware, basically. You are inviting a post repair inspection. You are encouraging it. So because you've agreed to come in behind somebody else, which is the same as you're questioning their skill, their word, what they say it took to repair the vehicle, you've asked for it, right? You don't get to say we didn't deserve this. No, you deserved it. You went and got it. Now, whether you know, I've had some shops go, Kristen, we had no idea this vehicle just popped up in our in tray as a DRP assignment. And we were, we just saw it as what we thought was a normal claim. Well, you had to go pick the vehicle up. So you had to dispatch a tow truck driver. And so you should have known where it was at. This is just my personal advice. Say no to those. There's nothing on the DRP that says you have to accept every assignment that is sent to you. When one is at another shop, you should say no, unless you are perfect. So if you believe you can pull this vehicle in and you can fix it per all of the OE standards, you can do a great job, that you're going to pass a post-repair inspection and you're going to do it for the price that the insurer wants to pay you, go get it. I mean, like, that's awesome. But if you don't think you can, or you're not, because I meet so many shops that go, yeah, we're not going to follow all the OE procedures. We're not going to do the safety inspections. We're not going to do any of that. Then why go get the car? I mean, you're just asking for trouble. You're asking for a post-repair inspection. So I would have so much less work to do if more people just said no to going and pulling cars from other repair facilities. I always tell people, we don't hunt these post-repair inspections down. We do everything we can to try to avoid them. All right, so this car does get picked up. It does get taken back to our MSO. And of course, obviously they can't repair it per the estimate that State Farm wrote, and they asked for a supplement in the amount of $1,426.45. So in the grand scheme of things, they didn't supplement much. Instead of repairing the fender, they wanted to replace it. Instead of repairing the quarter panel for 8 hours, they wanted like 14. And then they added a little time to the rear body panel for repair that State Farm didn't have on their estimate at all. Which, Dennis, I'm just really disappointed. Like, I expect more from my field insurance estimators, and so they just a few little things that they do, and that comes to $1,426.45 for a supplement. So right away, the letter or the statement or profession of repair that our State Farm adjuster gave our customer is already out the window, because apparently we can't repair it per what the State Farm adjuster wrote. So we already have a problem there. All right. When we perform a post-repair inspection, I tell every shop there are 3 areas of focus. So most people will just come in and go, well, yep, this is a crappy repair. And they try to write an estimate for what it's going to cost to re-repair the vehicle and do everything correctly. And that's the worst thing you can do, because from an insurer's perspective, if this does happen to be, we always tell people DRP post-repair inspections are easier because there's some contractual requirements. But even if I'm inspecting a shop that was not on a DRP and a post-repair, I am more than likely at some point going to need to involve the insurer. If I call the insurer and say this is just a really bad repair, they're basically going to tell me, not my circus, not my monkey. You need to deal directly with the shop. So if I'm going to involve an insurer and I want them to be a part of this process, having the 3 buckets is very, very important. So the first thing I tell every shop is when the vehicle comes in, I want you to know, I want you to be able to tell me what damage is still on the vehicle from the original impact. So if we go back to the original day of loss on this one, which is January 20th of 2025, is there damage on this car that was sustained in the first accident that was not estimated at all, not estimated and not repaired? In other words, that's my bucket of monies or damage that is still owed under the claim. So what the shop did wrong is technically not owed under the claim again. But anything that's damaged from the original accident that was not estimated and not repaired is still open for indemnification. So that's something that the insurance company can still pay for. That's a great way to have a conversation with them. Hey, we did a post-repair inspection. There's a lot wrong. A lot of it's not your problem. Totally get it. But here are the 3 buckets that we want you to be aware of. Number 2 is damage that was estimated and repaired, but performed improperly. So what did the shop write for? What did they do that was wrong? Either improper sectioning, substandard repair process, substandard refinish, whatever, but what was estimated that was done wrong. And then the third thing is what was estimated, damage that was estimated but then not performed. So that's work billed, not performed. What did the shop charge for to the consumer that they collected and was paid for, but they did not do? That can be part replacement, that can be labor operations, that can be materials, any of those things that they got paid for, but that they did not do. I want to just another tip for you guys. One of the ones that I will get you on the hardest is if you are a Restore Corrosion Protection $10 single line guy. Because I'm going to tell you that you got paid for here are the 5 things that are, corrosion protection or preventatives that were required in the repair process, whether that's cavity wax, sealers, etc., undercoatings, etch primers, anything that would have fallen in that category. Because I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you might have tried to do those things. Of course, then I'm going to wand the car. But if you did that $10 entry, even though there's like $500 worth of material that should have been used on the car, I'm going to say, well, you were willing, you said you did this for $10, but you didn't do it. And so that's work billed, not performed. So in other words, you billed for it, but then you didn't do it. So that's where that dangerous little button that everybody likes to get done with an estimate and go down. Couple of things right away on this estimate. One of the first things we'll do before we actually go look at the car is we'll ask to get all documentations from the repair facility. I want your final estimate. I want your frame reports. I want your alignment reports. Anything that you said you did, I want to see. If you can't provide for me a frame report and an alignment report, but you charge for them, then we have a records keeping issue possibly, or a fraud issue. So then we'll go look at some different things. So right away, the first thing that's wrong with this car is that the only structural charge on this estimate is 3-hour body pull. Now, I can tell you going back and forth through the email exchange when the first shop had it, the adjuster, our buddy Dennis and his friends, wanted to just pay the shop to do some rough pulls on this quarter panel while they were trying to debate repair versus replace, etc. There is no setup and measure. There is nothing other than this 3 hours of body time that just says body pull. What did you do for that? Clearly, though, when we get to it, none. You didn't do none for that. So that right away is a huge red flag. When I see that on estimates, it tells me that there was some recognition of something that just wasn't properly performed. And we get into this miscellaneous. So that's this miscellaneous line. I want you guys to also take note that this is a front and a rear hit on a Subaru, and the entire estimate is 91 lines. But when they charge to reset the steering angle sensor, and there's a price for that, and then they have DNR battery to disable airbag system. Those are also red flags, particularly if you've read through Subaru's procedures and know what has to be done during the repair process and then what has to be done after the repair process before this vehicle goes back. So we had some red flags on that right away. As we start to put together the repair documentation before we head to the car, we have the procedures, we have the shop's final estimate, we have the shop's final documentation. We start to try to match things up, and where there are holes, those things will be circled. And then they'll be addressed as we get out to the vehicle and get a little closer. Okay, so the shop on this one during the inspection process did a great job. And they, instead of you having to look at just a bunch of photos, they supplied some video. So I'm going to play those for you. In fact, actually, I hit the wrong button because there's some audio with this. So I want to make sure that you guys get everything in all of its glory here. Okay. All right. So this is now post repair. The customer was waiting the day the customer picks this vehicle up from the body shop. So this national MSO that repaired this vehicle, they immediately drive it for reinspection. So there's not drove it around for a while and wanted to feel. So you guys can already see from the pictures, you're probably already having heartburn. If you can see that deep scratch in that right rear door already just has you screaming. But let's watch the video. You can tell that that's just a mangled mess in that tail lamp pocket and into that rear body panel. And the paint is, you can tell where somebody tried to do a little knockdown sanding on it. They even know the paint was bad. That ridge, we're gonna watch this middle video, that ridge under there and pinholes and trash, this may be there are mistakes. Like there are little things I can reinspect. Anybody could reinspect any car and find some little things wrong. By no means is any repair perfect. But this is as far from, I get better out of high school collision repair first year students than this. Someone painted this, someone saw this, someone reassembled this. I love the shims trying to hold the damn taillight in. I mean, like everything about this was wrong, but as it went through multiple processes, people just kept going, hey, either I don't care, or I feel like I'm being paid not to care, or we don't, it's not, that's State Farm's problem, not ours. Maybe there's this assumption that because it's a DRP, you're not responsible for the end product.
Pretty nice, huh?
Dry spray, trash, nibs, mangled. There's also this assumption that I run into a lot in this industry, specifically from our DRP shops. People go, why do you pick on DRPs? Because you should do better. You are presented to the customer as the better than average repairer in a market. The customer isn't presented that the DRP shops are below average. The customer is presented as these shops are well trained, well equipped, well staffed, that these people are above average. Typically, if we go back to the origins of DRP, we didn't select the low performers in a market. We typically went for the higher performers in a market. We wanted it to be a good repair. So DRPs are presented to the consumer as their best option, that you're better off. We've certified these shops. We've inspected them. We know they're trained. We know they're equipped. We're going to give you a warranty. They're going to give you a warranty. So if you're going to present yourself like that to the consumer, then you have a higher duty. I hold you to a higher standard than I do the non-certified independent body shop that's working out behind his house. Because every DRP manager always tells me, Kristen, you're too hard on us. Think about all the shops in the market that are doing worse. I go, yeah, there's 1,000 of them, and I could drive you to them right now and show you. But they're not being given to the customer as a promise of excellence. You are, and you accepted it, and you want to be on that insurer's website, and you want to do all these things. You guys spend more money in your lobbies than you do on making sure the repairs are complete and accurate. So I do hold you to a higher standard, and I think you should probably hold yourself to a higher standard as well. Let's look at our next video here. Now we're on the front end. Oh, wow. So we wrote to replace a grill, but we put it right back on the car and delivered it. That's not even, like, I've had some inspections where it's been like a small scratch or an imperfection or something that I could say, well, probably the tech maybe missed it. It should have been on the estimate as a replaced part, right? But this is no excuse. Like there's No denying. All right, some more of our inspection here. Fantastic quality there. Can't imagine, that sounds like a banjo running down the highway. And then this is an example of build for but not performed. So the replacement of the moldings was on the but was not done. All right, so it gets worse, I'm sure. So one of the things that is discussed frequently in this claim is the repairability of the quarter versus replacing. So the first shop had replaced and basically said this quarter is non-repairable. Lots of people like to look at damage and go, we can repair anything, right? Watch me metal finish, and people post these pictures of these really shiny panels, and you go, wow, that's amazing craftsmanship. That is not craftsmanship. I got a video I'm going to release a little later this week that shows the science of that and why that is not craftsmanship. That is actually, that's just a guaranteed failure. And we always say, well, show us the backside of the panel. So the shop agreed. Originally, State Farm wanted 8 hours on the quarter panel. The shop supplemented and put 12, and then added like 3 hours to the rear body panel. You have seen the surface, so that's how bad the repair was. At least some of those metal finishing videos, the repairs are a little bit, they look good on the outside. It's the backside or the metal thinning that will cause that to be a problem. But when you get inside, and we always say, show us the backside of the panel, this is what we had. Absolute hackery butchery. For those of you that have the key system or whatever, throw it away. Like we have glue. This is what you're doing to the backside of the panels. This is how bad that is. Like, the customer deserves a real repair, right? They deserve for the vehicle to be, again, this upper left-hand corner here. Let's just maul it to death, right? And then let's burn through everything as much as we can. You can see where a key system was used, and then I'm going to say they needed a little bit more. So maybe that 3 hours of body pull, somebody did a little pulling with some tabs, probably is what happened there, in my opinion. The whole quarter, that whole corner into the body panel is on the backside is just absolutely completely butchered. So yes, Dennis from State Farm, it did need a quarter panel. Like, if you get caught up on what you think is severity by looking at just the damage and not thinking through the repair process, you will make bad decisions. And this one was a great example of a bad decision. Now, it did have a wheel on the estimate, so that left front wheel had some contact, needed to be replaced. And there was an alignment done on the estimate from our insurer. So they did at least put an alignment on there, although they did a reconditioned wheel. Put an alignment on there. And then our shop charged for that alignment. Now, once the vehicle comes in for the post-repair inspection, of course, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to set it up and measure it, and then we're going to send it over for alignment. This is the alignment report the shop got back. There's no way at all that there's no alignment report provided from the shop, by the way, and there's no frame report provided from the shop. So if this is the alignment report that we get when the vehicle goes straight from delivery day from the shop to into the post-repair inspection, there's no way it was done. I mean, like, unless you just did it and looked at it and went, screw it, we'll just send it off, right? So if we get over and start looking at this, we already have some problems and some issues to be addressed. I still a little upset that this is exactly how it came back from one day. I would love to have known what was actually done. I think if I was this MSO, I would want to know what was actually done too. Like, there's a lot of learning points in this whole scenario. Learning point number one, don't take a car from another body shop. Learning point number two is how are these things being done in the shop, and then who's responsible for quality and signing off? Like, who prints the report and sticks it in the file? Clearly, everybody's saying there isn't one in this particular instance, but who is responsible within the shop? Is it a production manager? Is it an estimator? Is it whatever? Going, we got a problem, and not just pushing that thing off and trying to get it to delivery. We don't know. All right, so what was the result of this? The vehicle was determined to be a total loss. So after the inspection was done, The insurer is called because obviously, you want to say I told you so. And the body shop gets called. Within almost 48 hours, the vehicle is determined to be a total loss. The ACV range was anywhere from 20,000 to 24,000. I'm gonna venture to say it probably settled on the high side once you have a customer that you've kept them out of their car for X number of time, while you argued what was originally said to be done 3 days after the loss. So 3 days after the loss, we knew this thing was a total loss. You as the insurer prolonged this, and we're right back where we should have been. So I'm gonna say probably that this settled on the higher side of the ACV. I can't imagine that somebody really wanted to try to get a low ACV out of this. If I'm the DRP manager, I don't care what I pay because I'm gonna make the DRP pay it back. So I've had a couple of them tell me that whatever it settles for, they don't really care because they're gonna get their money back. How much of that money back, whether they get the ACV plus the repair back, or however they do it, I have seen some where the insurer just pays for it, makes it go away, and it's like the shop gets away with it. And sometimes that happens, and it gives the shop a false sense of security. They think they're not responsible for it. But in this instance, the vehicle did total. But what does that mean when we look at it? So I always like to tell people there's a cost for everything. And so here's where we ended up. The data loss was January 20th of 2025. State Farm original inspection note is listed as January 23rd of 2025, but our buddy Dennis there didn't write his estimate until the 27th, so January 27th of 2025. All total, pretty fast, significant service. I'm happy with that aspect. However, we knew on January, we knew this thing was a total loss. Should have never had that estimate written. What Dennis wrote, technically, probably bad faith. Somebody can make a really good case for that. That was an intentionally bad estimate. You don't make those kind of mistakes because I could take a kid out of high school, train him for a couple of weeks, and they would have wrote a better sheet than that. So what does that mean? Well, we have the lost time and rental. So all of this time between the data loss, the decision to move it out of the first shop, and then to get it repaired at the second shop, that's a lot of lost time and lost rental. We don't know the exact cost of all of that. The shop fees. So for this MSO to come pick it up and tow it out of there, the shop fees are $2,700. The second shop charged $8,594.24 for the repair. The tow bill was in that estimate, so the cost of going and getting that vehicle is part of that $8,594.24. There would have been additional rental during the PRI. So once the customer brought the vehicle back, it's inspected, and they're like, "Yep, we got a problem, bad repair, bad whatever." So now the shop is on an additional set of rental. We don't know what that all ended up costing, so that's unknown. And then the ACV settlement, by the time taxes were added, we would have known it would have at least been above $24,000. So the total amount State Farm spent on this 2021 Subaru with $35,294 at a minimum. Odds are we're probably in the 37,000 something dollar range. I'd love to know all of it. So for a car that on January 23rd, we could have declared a total loss, paid the ACV, saved all the rentals, saved everything, saved customer heartburn, saved all of that, could have been settled. And a lot of things went wrong. I think it starts with our State Farm adjuster. And then part two, the second body shop, when they got that assignment, should have said no. Like you're there, if you have a body shop saying something is a total, you never should take those. There's a difference between repair, maybe if there's a repairability disagreement, but if you have a shop saying one's a total, just save yourself all kinds of trouble. We've seen some regional MLOs or whatever basically have a policy that says we don't take cars from other body shops because this is what's going to happen when you do. So we know probably minimum 35,000, probably more was spent on this vehicle. And then what does that usually end up happening? All right, once that's over, as a shop, we're done, right? We did our part. We looked at the car. We did our 3 buckets. We answered any questions. What the insurer then decides to do, or the shop decides to do, is really, it's not ours to decide. We're just standing there sort of as an expert offering to answer any questions. We're not going to be the expert should this thing have to like go to trial or go to like discovery or whatever, because you're in the market. It would be hard to say that you're an unbiased expert at that point. You're just the initial person there, right? The questions. So at this point, typically when the insurer decides that they're going to pay for it, shops are kind of out of it at that point. You walk away. If you have fees for your inspection, your measurements, your time, your pictures, your photos, you can present those as new fees for when this vehicle is picked up by the salvage yard. You can hand them to the DRP shop and try to get them to write you a check. Everybody's got a different philosophy of that. But what I want to talk about is that when that's over, there's still some processes that can happen in the back. So if you're a shop and you do PRIs, or if you're a shop and you're getting PRIs done on you, there are some things that kind of go on after that. So after a decision is made to total the car, to do a re-repair, whatever that is, there are some additional steps that commonly happen in those. And so we thought we would share those on a Tech Tip Tuesday. So typical, once this is done, very rarely, usually when you lay out everything that's wrong with the car, people are in general pretty good about paying for it. We've had some shops that kind of get a little defensive at first, and we're like, not my circus, not my monkey, dude. You do whatever you want to do. We're trying to tell you how to get this easily taken care of. You want to go further, that's fine. But typically when it settles and it's all said and done, the customer has a couple of options available to them. And those options are sort of critical these days, that customers understand or seek counsel and have somebody advise them on what to do next after, this Subaru gets bought back and the customer is now holding a check and has to go car hunting. So what has to happen? There can be basically a two-part Department of Insurance complaint that can be filed. The first part of the complaint is that the insurance company recommended their DRP and said that the DRP was going to fix it per their estimate. But then once it gets over there, there's changes to it. So clearly, it's almost like a bait and switch. You just want to put the Department of Insurance on notice that the insurance company is now interjecting themselves into repair. They're determining how vehicles are going to get repaired, where the primary duty is to just compensate for those. Like, I don't want to choose repair. That's terrible. That's the people I have on staff would never pass any sort of expert test to be able to say that they know what they're doing. It's kind of like if you watched Coffee Talk, it's what we talked about Monday on why would any shop just work off a progressive estimate. That's the dumbest thing ever. Well, maybe not the dumbest thing ever. I could probably think of a couple of things that would be worse. And then part two of that complaint is that, well, as a result of the improper handling, the way that this had to do, the way that I had to get a reinspection, the way that they then had to total the car because they didn't do it the first time, that there's been an overpayment. In this instance, a little bit more important because State Farm is a mutual company, and so there's the way that the policyholders own the company and benefit from that. I don't see anybody getting any dividends probably in a long, long time. But there's a difference between a mutual company and stock companies and different things. So they overpaid. So we spent way too much money under this policy that we shouldn't have as a result of poor handling and poor decisions, and then poor DRP, which ultimately the insurer is responsible for the DRP shop. And so that's an overpayment. How is that going to get assessed? So if the adjuster just comes back in and pays the total loss under the collision coverage, and you have all of these payments, is there a potential negative? In other words, what should have cost just the value of the vehicle, you've spent $10,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 more. Is the customer penalized? If this was an at-fault accident or whatever, what are the ramifications of them spending too much money to the policyholder specifically? And then here's an example of when an insurer is saying they're spending too much money in the state, it's costing too much, and they need to have their premiums increased. But here's how they're mishandling or mispaying and spending too much money on claims. So that's a good thing to get on record. So if customers do that, those are fantastic. And then in some states, if the shop is required to keep a motor vehicle repair license, which in New York you are required to, there are other states, if there is a governing board that has anything to do with the shop's license, then the customer may want to take all of the information once the claim is settled and they're paid, and then go and file a complaint against that shop, so that it's on record for other consumers to be able to see. Because I guarantee you, this shop is still on State Farm's DRP program. Nobody went, oh my God, look at this. This is terrible. We better suspend them, take them off the program for a while until we can figure out, or maybe reinspect more cars. So I guarantee you, never missed a beat. That shop never came off the program, and even today is continuing to get assignments sent to it. So if you have a state licensing board or whatever, at least a consumer filing that complaint can get it on record, so that other consumers, if they do any diligence and research, can see that, hey, this is a problem. In some cases, some of that regulation may be able to fine the shop for either poor performance, the work bill not performed. I mean, we think about them getting paid for that grill, and then they reinstalled that thing and gave it back to the customer. So all of those things that are on there can be a potential secondary complaint. So not just always the Department of Insurance. That's how the insurance company handled your claim. And then if you have any state regulations, sometimes it's as simple. If you don't have a state regulation that's like overseas licensing, that all may fall under the Attorney General's office under consumer protection. I always tell people, don't expect miracles, right? But if you have a pattern, and you can establish a pattern, and you can make people in government aware of the issues, then it may help if there's a law that needs to come up. So if you have all this stuff on record, and then you have a right to appraisal bill or something going through, you can sometimes soften the defense of those in a lot of different ways. So that's a typical post-repair inspection. We're going to start sharing a lot of these. I think in the past we would just say, here's a car, we got it totaled, yay. But a little bit more detail on the estimates, some of the inspection video, some of the things that we see, so that people can see why we get a little agitated these days. But for a tech tip, everything you do may potentially be seen. So if you're using a key gun and you're burning the hell out of cars and ripping on them, if you're grinding down because you want to be a metal finisher and you're thinning out every panel, if you're not following procedures and processes, if you're not writing estimates correctly and doing all that, there's somebody that maybe eventually will see that and do a post-repair inspection, and then you're gonna have to answer for those things. And then the number one thing I would say is, don't take a car from another shop. You're asking for a post-repair inspection at that point. You've kind of, it's almost like walking across the street and punching the other guy in the nose and taking the car out. You're asking for them to come along behind you and judge your work at that point. If you don't want to be judged, or if you don't think your work is worthy of judgment, or that you would pass an inspection or whatever, don't do it. Shops, you got to write on those windshields, because that sometimes the shop manager has no idea. Timmy is assigned to the State Farm account. Timmy got an assignment that needs to go pick up this car, and he just dispatches a tow truck driver and they go and get it. And it's after the fact that this happens. I can tell you how many times I've sat down with an RVP of an MSO that went, I can't believe we took this car. Why? I told everybody not to take cars from shops anymore. So if there's something on that windshield and it drops, if Timmy didn't listen, then at least at that point, no one can tell me that they didn't know that they accidentally took a car from another shop, or that they didn't know it was going to be reinspected. So that's my tech tip for you on Tuesday. Next video we've got coming out, we are going to show some a really cool thing that BMW has done to explain why that metal finishing that you see that everybody's so proud of and posting pictures of is actually a problem. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. I'm gonna try to get Larry to join me and explain the technical, but still make it entertaining without being, him and Jeff, the engineering firm, can get really into those weeds sometime. But that'll be our next one. But that's your Tech Tip Tuesday, and I will see you guys again next week. Bye.